Chapter 11. Dear Tardis. The Doctor and Anji moved apart, eyes still locked. "Don't be angry," said the Doctor. "It's what I have to do. It's right. You know it's right." Anji turned away. "You'll lose everything," she said, "and so will I." Doctor? Anji?" said Fitz. They ignored him. "I can leave your name out of it. I'll just tell him they're not his," said the Doctor, confusing Fitz no end. "And you think he won't work it out? Who else had access to you in your confinement? Me! Only me!" Anji was shouting now. "For Earth's sake, Elizabethan, you can't do this to me!" The President was watching, eyes wide. Fitz saw him mouth, "Elizabethan?" "The girls can't be allowed to take over, Guy. They're unstable. They mustn't rule." "Then have more children, a male." "I can't risk it. Look what happened with the girls. That can't happen again." Fitz saw the President's mouth, "Guy," and turned to look at Handstrom's body. Elizabethan and Guy? Fitz thought. The President's wife and Handstrom? Had their spirits taken over Anji and the Doctor somehow? "So you're just going to tell your darling husband that you've been lying to him all these years," shouted Anji. "That to stop him throwing you out on the streets, you had another man's children." The Doctor's eyes blazed. "I was never unfaithful to him." Anji snorted. "It wasn't a question of faith. If you'd let things happen the normal way instead of being so bloody pure, then our children might have been normal." The Doctor slapped her. Fitz's mouth dropped right open. That was the Doctor, and that was Anji, but they weren't, and the Doctor had just hit her? "How dare you!" the Doctor cried. "We needed an heir. John will understand that I was doing it for him, for the people." "You were doing it for yourself," sneered Anji. "President's wife, most important woman on the planet. You just couldn't bear the thought of being put aside for someone else, letting someone else have the glory. There. Can you take the truth? Or are you going to hit me again? Go on, hit me again." She offered the Doctor the other cheek. He was quiet now. "I'm going to tell John," he said softly. "I'll try to keep your name out of it, but New Jupiter must come first. Our daughters must never see power." He turned away. Anji reached down and picked up a lump of metal, part of the memory machine's casing. "My daughters will succeed," she muttered, and raised the metal above her head. "No!" Fitz realized what she was intending just in time and dived forward. He grabbed the metal rod from behind and pulled it down, Anji with it. He pushed her to the floor and sat on her. "Help me!" he cried as she struggled beneath him. Zernik came over and held down her arms, shushing and cooing. Behind them, the Doctor stood still, staring at the door. The President was frowning, seemingly unaware of what was going on. "Elizabethan," he was saying. "Guy. Not my children." "Stay down, Anji," Fitz yelled. "Whatever it is, we'll sort it. Does anyone here know how to do an exorcism?" Zernik caught his eye. "I think it was the memory machine," he said. "You heard the Princess say they'd found all these old memories inside, their mother and that. I think the Doctor and Anji were inside those memories when the machine exploded, and they sort of stuck for a bit. I think it should fade, though. I expect they just should have come out of it slowly, that's all." "You better be right," said Fitz grimly. But Anji was indeed stopping struggling, and in a few moments her eyes closed again. Fitz and Zernik got off her and turned to look at the Doctor. "So, he should be all right now too," Fitz said. "I think so," said Zernik. "But, well, I think he thinks he's dead now." "What?" "What they were doing, that really happened, I think. That was the President's wife and Mr. Handstrom. He killed her. The princesses didn't. And that must be why he shot the machine, when he found out those old memories could be inside. He didn't want to be found out after all these years of safety. So the President's wife, well, she's not a part of it anymore. She's not in the memory except dead, so the Doctor's not got a part to play. These must be Mr. Handstrom's memories, what he remembered doing. Anji's eyelids were flickering open again. Hold her arms again, just in case, Fitz murmured to Zernik. Anji? Anji, can you hear me? She let out a shuddering breath. Yes. You're not going to try to kill the doctor again, are you? Her eyes flew open at that. Fitz, what on earth are you talking about? Then a pause and, ow, my cheek hurts. What's going on? Fitz grinned, relieved. It's you again. Phew. And to Zernik, you can let go of her now. Though Fitz did notice, as he turned back to the doctor, that Zernik looked a bit reluctant to relinquish his hold. The doctor was still standing there, unmoving. Fitz went over to him and waved a hand in front of the doctor's face. The doctor didn't respond. Fitz leaned his ear close to the doctor's face. The doctor didn't seem to be breathing. He thinks he's dead, Fitz yelled. He really thinks he's dead. Help! Anji scrambled up off the floor, looking confused but reasonably composed. As she ran over to join Fitz, Zernik was still holding on to her arm. She put her hand to the doctor's neck. No pulse! Quick, help me lay him down! The doctor was standing solidly upright. With the desperation of the situation, Fitz gestured Anji around behind the doctor, and then pushed. The doctor fell backwards, still rigid, like a cartoon character hit by a frying pan. Anji caught him and lowered him to the ground, and began doing efficient-looking things like tilting his head back and what appeared to be sticking her fingers down his throat. "Checking the airways clear," she said in response to Fitz's worried sounds. She leaned in to the doctor and breathed into his mouth a couple of times, pinching his nose closed as she did so. "Now, you start chest compressions." Fitz looked blank. "Fitz! Oh, no time, no time!" Anji moved down to the doctor's side and began to do what were presumably chest compressions. "You travel through the universe fighting monsters and you don't even know basic first aid?" Anji cried. "No!" Fitz yelled back, guilt making him defensive. "Look, I've saved more lives than you have, and you do know he's got 2 hearts, don't you? You could be hitting the wrong bits." Anji stopped her rhythmic presses and moved back to the doctor's mouth. "No time to argue," she said, bending over him. She breathed into the doctor's mouth. Suddenly, his eyes flew open, and he coughed. Anji sat back quickly. Not quickly enough. The doctor grabbed her and planted a huge kiss on her lips. "Thank you," he cried. "You saved my life." "No, she didn't," thought an inner mean bit of Fitz. "You just turned your body off for a bit. You can do that. You just probably don't know it." Anji was detaching the doctor's arms and standing up. Fitz noticed her surreptitiously wiping her mouth and was quietly pleased. The doctor jumped up too. "Where am I?" he said. No, don't tell me. Yes, I remember." Fitz's stomach did a leap. Surely there hadn't been time for the triplets to sort everything out. "We're on New Jupiter," concluded the doctor. Fitz breathed easily again. The rest of the room suddenly came back into focus. Antarctica and Africa were still weeping over their sister's body. They'd not looked away once throughout the drama. The president was staring forward with glazed eyes. The doctor was looking at all this too. "Oh, no, he cried, bounding over to where Asia lay, Fitz and Anji following. The doctor examined the slender corpse, lying peacefully and looking for all the world like a sleeping angel. "I'm sorry," Fitz heard him whisper under his breath, but the other 2 triplets ignored him. Then the doctor went over to Hoover. Fitz and Anji hung awkwardly back. The doctor sat down beside the haunted man. "She loved you, you know," he said. "It wasn't true what Handstrom said. She knew how desperately you wanted children, how important it was to you. And you see, she knew you could never have them." That caught the man's attention. He turned a puzzled face to the doctor. "She was a geneticist. She carried out tests. Oh, I know you didn't know about that. She didn't want to worry you. She didn't want you to know. She loved you so much." The doctor turned away then, and Fitz saw a strange look in his eyes. Not like the doctor. Was he still feeling what Elizabethan had felt? Then the look passed, and the doctor continued. Her course of action was possibly not the most sensible or rational, but perhaps being locked up for so many years didn't help her to think straight. The doctor looked more like himself with that, the judgmental doctor, condescending to the forces of oppression. She knew that Handstrom wanted her, the only man allowed to see her. "My wife, my best friend," muttered the president. "No!" Fitz jumped slightly at the force in the doctor's voice. "He wanted her, but she remained faithful. That's how much she loved you, and you insult her by believing her to have betrayed you? He was all over her. It would have been so easy, but she wouldn't do it. Have you heard of in vitro fertilization? Well, that's what she did, and it hurt her a lot. And because she didn't really know what she was doing, she managed to split her one child into 3, and goodness knows how she damaged them. She was stupid and irresponsible, but she was doing it all for you. Do you think she deserved that?" "And then she died," said Anji, stepping forward. "I remember that bit. Handstrom had power over her, and he didn't want to give that up. Oh, and he wanted his children on the throne as well. But she was going to throw it all away, and he would have been ruined. So he killed her. And you locked up those 3 children for the rest of their lives," said the doctor. "And now one of them is dead. Lots of people are dead." Fitz winced slightly. Hoover was crying now, and whatever the man had done, Fitz wanted the doctor to stop this. Stop kicking him while he was down. Stop rubbing it in. It wasn't as if the guy had done any of it on purpose. Suddenly Hoover looked up, gazing right into the doctor's eyes. "She's in you," he said. "You can make it all right again. Bring her back. I can ask her to forgive me." "That's all you seem to do," said the doctor. "But it wouldn't be her. There were broad sweeps of her personality in there, a few memories, but not enough." "It would be enough," cried Hoover. "I want her back, please. I need her. Give me back my wife. Give the children back their mother." The doctor looked over to where Antarctica and Africa were still keening over the body of their sister. Fitz thought they looked more animal than human. "She won't be the same," said the doctor. "But I'll try. Not for you, for them. They need someone to love them. They're still children." The doctor was staring at the girls so hard that Fitz was worried. "Doctor, they've killed people." "I know," he said, turning now to Fitz and freezing him with a flash of those ice-blue eyes. "Do you want them to kill more? It's not all their fault." As the doctor turned away, he said something else under his breath. Fitz couldn't make out what it was, but it started with M. The doctor knelt down beside the Trips' memory machine. "It's burnt out, isn't it?" asked Fitz. "Can you fix it?" He was hoping the answer was no. "No," said the doctor. "Phew. But I know an old girl who can. Bum. That is, I think that if I link this up to the TARDIS, she'll be able to fill in the missing connections for me. I think she'll know what to do." Fitz was on the verge of saying, "Well, she did it for me." He caught himself just in time. Keeping secrets was difficult. Before they left, Fitz had asked the doctor to wait 5 minutes and, after checking something with Anji, had made his way to the boxing ring. There he found Princess Leia happily sniffing around the puddles of blood. Elvis's blood. Fitz scooped up the creature and took it back. He thought it might help Antarctica to have a pet around. He wasn't sure why he cared, but somehow he did. They took the bus back to the Earthworld reception. The doctor let Fitz drive, which turned out to be a mistake, as he managed to plough straight into a stationary triceratops while distracted by a frozen female android in a miniskirt. They had to walk the rest of the way. The doctor carried Antarctica in his arms, and Hoover carried Africa. Anji was carrying Princess Leia. Fitz had to push the trolley with the memory machine on it. They couldn't all fit in the ground car, so the doctor, Fitz, Anji and Zernik were going to wait behind in the reception centre while Hoover and the guards took the girls back to the palace and brought back Elizabethan. Fitz took back Princess Leia from Anji and handed the crocodile over to Antarctica. The girl said nothing, but hugged the little reptile tight to her chest. Fitz was still spooked that this bothered him. He stood and watched as the girls were put in the back of the ground car. He thought he could still hear a faint ticking from Princess Leia, even after the car door had been shut, even after they were driven away. The four who remained stood silently for a moment. No one had anything to say. "So, you're a terrorist?" said Fitz after a while to break the silence. "I don't think I am anymore," replied Zernik. "I wasn't really one in the first place anyway. The others are probably... well, I don't know what they'll be doing now. I don't expect I'll see them again." Fitz couldn't think of a way of carrying on that conversation. He turned to Anji and was startled to see that she was crying. "Anji," he said, alarmed. "Distract me," she cried. "I don't have any distractions anymore. Please." The doctor dived at a gift display, grabbed a snowstorm of the Eiffel Tower and a can of Coca-Cola, and took an apple out of his pocket. He began to juggle them, higher and higher, closer and closer to the ceiling, and then they vanished. Fitz shook his head. The doctor sure was clever. Anji was almost smiling, though the tears still shone on her cheeks. The doctor put an arm round her. "We'll be back in the TARDIS soon," he said. "Then I'll take you home." Fitz noted that it was Zernik who looked upset at that news. Then there was a sound from outside. "I think they're back," Fitz said, and they wandered out to meet them. The President had returned alone, save for the inanimate form of what was presumably his wife, a blonde-haired woman lying across the back seat. Not long afterwards, their little procession set off for the TARDIS. Anji had asked Hoover how the girls were, and he hadn't answered. She asked the doctor whether they'd be all right if someone got an android of Asia back online. The doctor had said no, they wouldn't be all right. Because they really did think of themselves as three parts of the same person, and now the links were gone for good. No android could replace that. And as Asia had been the controlling triplet, the brain if you like, then they weren't going to be able to function properly ever again. If there was someone to love them and look after them, perhaps they might cope. And once again, Fitz felt a touch of grief and wondered why. They had made it uneventfully to the prehistoric zone, and now the doctor's party was tramping across the plain towards the TARDIS. Every now and again they passed a stationary robot, a dinosaur, a horse, a medieval peasant. Fitz caught a glance of what might be a frozen triplet behind a rock, and shivered. He didn't look closely and didn't point her out to anyone else. Hoover was doing this weird manic sleepwalking thing. He didn't seem to know quite where he was or what was going on. He just kept calling out that they were going to find Elizabethan and he was going to ask her for forgiveness. Which was made even more strange because Zernik and Anji were carrying the limp body of the president's wife between them. Fitz was absolutely certain by now that the kid fancied Anji. She didn't seem to have twigged, though. And then there was Fitz, coming in last, trying to keep one eye on the doctor striding ahead of them all, while not losing control of the memory machine that he was wheeling in front of him. They reached the TARDIS at last. Well, Fitz finally stumbled up with his trolley about 30 seconds after the doctor had already opened the door and breezed in. This meant Fitz missed all the usual reactions of strangers entering the TARDIS for the first time. Or perhaps there hadn't been any. Hoover was too spaced out, and Zernick had probably heard all about it from Anji. The doctor had opened up a panel on the TARDIS console, and wires were spilling out. He grabbed the trolley from Fitz and began attaching the wires to bits sticking out of the memory machine. Fitz was convinced that he didn't have a clue what he was doing. Anji and Zernick were laying Elizabethan down on the scarlet plush sofa that sat on the left-hand side of the console room, between the entrances to what the doctor had named the filing alcove and the reference room, though Fitz didn't like to ask what it might be referring to. He still had a lot to get used to in this new-look TARDIS. Anji said, "Doctor?" He looked up from his spaghetti wiring. "Yes?" "If you get the machine working again, we could continue what the girls were doing, couldn't we? Give you your memory back?" He seemed to be considering it. Possibly. It depends. Did they do the initial work? Is there a copy of my memories in your head?" "I don't know," said Anji. "I don't think so," Fitz put in. "I'm pretty sure there wasn't time. In fact, I'm certain." This was not going to happen. But the kid, Zernick, had to butt in. "The princess said she was copying the memories across, and then they were talking for a bit before... I think it could have happened." "I don't think so," shouted Fitz, possibly a bit too forcefully. The doctor shot him a concerned look. "Well, let's not worry about it now. Plenty of time to sort it out once I've done this. Even if they haven't copied my memories into Anji's mind, I'm sure I can work something out with this marvellous machine." He patted it fondly. While he had been talking, the doctor had finished lashing up the machine to the console. He tried to run a lead across to Elizabethan, but it wouldn't quite reach, so Anji and Zernick had to drag the sofa a bit closer in order for the doctor to be able to attach connections to the android woman's head. Then he knelt down next to the nightmare contraption and plugged himself into the controller's section, where Asia had died. He flashed a smile at Fitz and Anji. "Here goes," he called. And that was it. With no ceremony, he had flicked a switch, and a look of fierce concentration took hold of his face. Fitz couldn't drag his eyes from the doctor. What if this was the last time he saw the doctor he knew? His mind had been almost destroyed once by what he had done. What would happen this time? And he couldn't tell the doctor that it was a really bad idea to have his memories restored, because he'd have to explain why, and that would be just as bad. No, if the doctor was going to remember, he had to do it naturally, in his own time, so it wasn't another sudden doctor-destroying shock. Everyone was busy, fussing about what was going on. No one noticed Fitz slip through the big wooden doors on the far side of the room. He wandered down the corridors, not quite sure where to go. The console room was the obvious place, the heart of the TARDIS. But that was no good at the moment, being full of people as it was. In the end, he decided on the library. It seemed a very doctorish sort of place. With compassion, he had just sort of talked, and she had heard him. He'd never tried to speak to this TARDIS before. But the doctor referred to it, her, as a person. It was worth a go. He still felt a bit silly, though. He stood in the middle of the library, clutching a copy of The Tale of Peter Rabbit for emotional support. He spoke quietly. I don't know if you can hear me, but if you can, I expect you probably... Well, care about him like I do. And you mustn't let him use that machine, please, that's all. Thank you." Then he went back to the console room. He took a deep breath in the calm of the corridor before stepping back into the chaos. It seemed he had missed most of the action. The Doctor and Elizabethan were still hooked up to the memory machine and the TARDIS console, but the Doctor's eyes were flickering open, and he was sitting up. Fitz spared a glance for the President's wife, and saw that her lips were opening soundlessly. Words were forming, but he couldn't tell what she was trying to say. Her husband was kneeling by her side, mumbling incomprehensible sounds of encouragement. He was holding her hand so tight that her fingertips had turned bright red. Back to the Doctor, whose eyes were open now. "It worked, didn't it?" he said, smiling. "I could feel it working. Well done, old girl." He reached an arm up over his shoulder to pat the central console. The console spat sparks at him. The Doctor yelped and leapt up, clearly astonished. "Something's going wrong!" cried Anji. And something certainly was. An electric blue current streaked down the wires towards the Doctor and Elizabethan. The Doctor yanked the connectors from his head and dived towards the unconscious woman, but Anji had got there first and grabbed a handful of wires. With a scream, she was thrown backwards, hitting her head and lying still. Zernik was by her side in a second. Fitz was rooted to the spot. "I didn't mean you to hurt anyone," he whispered. "I wanted to stop people being hurt." The Doctor was with Elizabethan now, detaching wires from the spasming body. The last one gone, she lay still. And the memory machine exploded. Fitz managed to move this time, throwing himself towards the Doctor, trying to get between the Doctor and the explosion, which wasn't happening. There was an un-explosion just as Fitz landed on top of the Doctor. The Doctor beamed at him. "The TARDIS! She's contained it! The clever old thing!" Then he glanced ruefully at the imploded shell of the machine. "Doesn't look like I'll be able to use that again, though." "Oh!" said Fitz, unable to bring himself to offer any insincere sympathy. There was a groan from the other side of the room as Anji sat up. Fitz noted that she automatically shrugged off Zernik's helping hand and saw the hurt puppy dog look in the boy's eyes. It could be hard being a teenager. "I'm all right," she called across to Fitz and the Doctor. "Don't worry about me." Fitz thought her tone was unnecessarily sarcastic and was reminded for one horrible moment of compassion. He really hoped that Anji was going to be a more amenable travelling companion than the TARDIS bitch queen from hell. Would it hurt the Doctor too much to pick up someone who was sweet and amenable and had good taste in men, i.e. fancied Fitz, once in a while? Surely not. And Anji wasn't the only person to wake up. On the sofa, Elizabethan was stirring. Her eyes opened, wide, dark brown eyes full of pain and confusion. She looked dazed and whispered, "John?" The President threw himself on her, hugging her so tight that Fitz hoped she had reinforced ribs. Of course, she probably had. The Doctor was talking as much to himself as to Fitz. Of course, an electrical shock was just what she needed to jump-start all the circuits, get everything working in harmony again. Why didn't I think of that? You might have done, given time, thought Fitz. But we didn't have time. He shot a glance at the TARDIS console. "Guess you knew what you were doing after all," he breathed, and gave it a surreptitious pat. Now the Doctor was examining Elizabethan, but speaking to Hoover. "She should be fine now," he was saying. "She shouldn't need physical rest, but she will need time to reassimilate everything. After all, as far as she's concerned, it's about 7 years ago." Hoover drew the Doctor to one side as they both stood up. "But what about... She only remembers up until the last time the triplets took a memory print, and even that will be vague, which means she does not remember her death. That's a good thing at the moment. Eventually, you will have to tell her. But the most important thing now is to reunite her with her daughters. And choose your chief technician more carefully next time. Fitz half expected the doctor to recommend Zernik for the post. It would, after all, tie things up nicely. But he didn't. Fitz hoped Hoover might think of it for himself. He was pretty sure that he, Fitz, would have got over his teenage unrequited loves a lot quicker if someone had given him a planet to run. "Now," said the doctor briskly, addressing the room, "is everyone fine?" Everyone said they were. Perhaps they didn't want to hurt his feelings. "We shouldn't trespass on your kindness any longer, Doctor," said Hoover, helping up the still dazed Elizabethan. "Oh, that's fine, said the doctor, who was now examining the console. "You've obviously got a lot of catching up to do, and an opening ceremony to cancel, I assume. I would offer to give you a lift back, but I think you'll be safer walking." But Elizabethan had sunk back onto the sofa. "My legs," she croaked, in a long, unpractised voice. "Oh dear," said the doctor. "Of course, there will be a lot of muscle wastage." "We'll have to help them back," Anji said. "But it's miles," Fitz cried automatically. Then he felt a bit ashamed. Couldn't she be wheeled on that trolley? He put out a hand to indicate the trolley on which the machines remained sat, then snatched it back with a cry. The metal was red hot. "Okay, maybe not," he said. "I'll help carry her," said Zernik unenthusiastically, looking at Anji as he said it. But the doctor's eyes were shining again. "No, Fitz is right. I have a better idea." He suddenly dashed from the console room, and everyone else looked at Fitz. "What did I say?" he asked. "I didn't say anything." It wasn't surprising that Fitz couldn't work out the doctor's plan. When the inner doors opened again, a grinning doctor was pushing a great big black motorbike, complete with sidecar, into the room. "Spotted this earlier," he said. "I assume it's mine to give away, unless anyone knows differently?" He looked at Fitz, who shrugged. He wished he'd known there was a bike in the TARDIS before. He could have had some fun. But maybe it hadn't been there back then. Anji was frowning. "I hope you've got some crash helmets for that thing," she said. The doctor kept grinning. "Oh, I'm sure I have. I'm very safety conscious." Fitz stifled a snort of laughter. The doctor closed his eyes and spun round in a circle with his arm outstretched. When he stopped, he strode over to the roundel his finger was pointing at, and, to Fitz's surprise, clicked it open to reveal a storage space. Inside were 2 crash helmets. One was grass green, with a white and yellow daisy painted on it. The doctor took that one out and handed it to Hoover. The other was shiny black with a mirrored visor. He gave that to Elizabethan, and then helped Hoover to lift her into the sidecar. "There only seem to be 2, he called across to Zernik. "Sorry." "That's all right," said the boy, not sounding all right at all. "I'll walk." Fitz, trying to help, flipped the switch to open the main doors. For some reason, he half expected them to be in another world already, even though the TARDIS hadn't moved. But the same barren prehistoric plain was outside. They wheeled out the bike, everyone trying to help a bit. The doctor helping Hoover to carry Elizabethan, while giving him instructions on what bit of the bike did what, and how to stay upright. Fitz wondered how much of it the president was actually taking in, because he seemed unable to take his eyes off his wife. But after she had been laid in the sidecar, he climbed onto the saddle as the doctor indicated, and an instant later the bike was roaring into life. Fitz thought he made out a "thank you" over the noise of the engine, and Elizabethan seemed to be trying to raise her arm in farewell. and then the president and his wife were zooming across the rocky ground, and soon they were just a faint, dark blob on the horizon. "Well, that's everything sorted," said the doctor. "Come on, Fitz, Anji, time we were off." Sorted? Well, perhaps. The president's right-hand man was dead, along with a young girl, albeit a homicidal one, and a lot of other people as well. The planet's main social and economic hope, as Fitz understood it, was now useless, and the woman who had been running it was among the dead anyway, although she had been homicidal too. Perhaps it was something in the water. Oh, and Anji had probably broken someone's heart without realizing it. All of this they'd sorted. But he decided not to mention it to the doctor. He just gave Zernik, the poor kid, a so-long wave and went back into the TARDIS. Behind him, he heard the doctor say goodbye, and then he followed Fitz inside. On the scanner, they saw Anji give the boy a hug and a peck on the cheek. Zernik seemed to be about to say something, but then he didn't. Anji came back inside too, and the doctor switched off the scanner. The picture shrank down to a white dot, just as it did on the TVs of Fitz's time that the scanner resembled. Then even the dot disappeared. A green-sleeved arm stuck out of the door and waved for a moment, before vanishing back inside. A few seconds later, the whole police box disappeared. Zernik stood, watching the empty space for a few moments. He unzipped the top of his jumpsuit and folded it back. He unpinned the small badge reading Anji and zipped up his top again. He looked at the badge for a while, then fastened it to the front of his jumpsuit. Then he sat down in the middle of the grey, featureless plain, hugging his knees to him, staring sightlessly ahead. After a while, he got up and began walking back to the city. Almost the instant she was back inside the TARDIS, Anji had rushed off. To her adopted room, Fitz reckoned. Probably best to leave her alone for a bit. Now, it was just Fitz and the doctor again. Less than a week since they'd stood together like this in Compassion's control room, the doctor leaping from control panel to control panel, Fitz looking on as always. But the doctor? He had lived several human lifetimes since then. He still seemed to be the week-ago doctor, though, in all the ways that mattered. And it was Fitz's job to make sure he stayed that way. He took a deep breath. "Doctor," he said, you remember when we went to Gallifrey?" He could sense the doctor's mind working 6/8 time. "We go to so many places, Fitz," he said. "But Gallifrey, we could maybe take Anji there? For a holiday?" "Oh yes, someday perhaps. Lovely place for a holiday, very—" The doctor was trying to think of a word that could cover all options, not show that he had no idea. Fitz knew that. "Very tranquil." "Yes, doctor, fair enough. Just thought I'd mention it." Yes, the doctor was himself again, and that was good. He wasn't the wreck he had been after the destruction of his home planet, Gallifrey, and that was good, too. He didn't know Fitz was a fake, or that he'd killed the real one, and that was very good. But how fragile was this new old doctor? Knowing all these things had all but destroyed his mind in the first place. Was he any more fitted to cope with the knowledge now? And knowing that he had to protect the doctor above all things, however horrified the doctor would be if he found out Fitz was protecting him, Fitz decided he would have to sacrifice any dreams of going back to Philippa, any hopes of Anji's of getting home, any hope of comfort from the doctor for his unreal state, in order to keep this doctor whole. Giving things up for the doctor felt good. He, well, the real Fitz anyway, but it felt like it had happened to him, had gone with his mum to see a play of Oscar Wilde's. Amdram, support the local community and they might begin to like us. There was a lot of keeping secrets for the good of others in that, and the young Fitz had been rather dissatisfied with the ending because all the secrets were kept and the characters went on, he assumed, to live happily ever after. He'd wanted to see the big dramatic scenes where all the secrets were discovered, and his mum had said he was missing the point. Now the mature Fitz could see the point, could understand that Oscar Wilde had the right idea all along. If keeping a secret could make someone else happy, then hey, secrets were a good thing. There might be some weird sense of closure if everything came out in the open, some soap opera resolution. But happy endings were infinitely preferable. The Doctor had looked after Fitz, had thought he was looking after Fitz, for years now. Fitz might not be the real Fitz anymore, but that was irrelevant. He had a purpose in life now. He was going to look after the Doctor, whatever it took. 2. Cybertron@xprof.net. From Anji Kapoor at mwfutures.co.uk. Date 15/2/01. 1514. Subject: Your death. Dear Dave, I wish I hadn't been thinking of leaving you. It makes things so much worse. For me, that is, thinking selfishly, but then, when haven't I been? I miss you terribly, but I have so many guilty feelings where the grief should be. It wasn't as if it was something I'd consciously decided. I wasn't planning on walking out or anything. There had just been feelings of, is this all there is? And wondering if I might be better off somewhere else, with someone else. But I wasn't going to do anything about it. Not really. Now, although I am utterly miserable, I feel I have no right to be. You weren't my whole world. You were just a habit. And you can miss a habit, but you shouldn't mourn it. And then I think, no, that's not how I felt about you. I do love you. Just because it wasn't a fairy tale anymore doesn't mean it wasn't love. I am allowed to grieve. And just because I was brought up not to feel sorry for myself doesn't mean I never have anything to be sorry for myself about. Does that make sense? Probably not. I'm not exactly in the mood to be particularly lucid. Earlier today, I experienced what it was like to kill your lover. When things get bad, I can think, well, at least I didn't do that. But of course, maybe it would be better if I had, because then I'd have been the one in control. It would have been my fault, and I wouldn't have to bear it like this. Though I do keep thinking that I should have tried harder to save you, or stayed and died with you, though I know that the first was impossible and the second illogical. Ha! Me and logic. Being logical doesn't make it right. Repeat till you've learned it. I wish I believed in reincarnation. It's one of those things that you're brought up with. And although once you have outside experiences, your rational mind dismisses such theories as illogical, you still have to hang it in the very back of your mind. I wonder what you'd come back as. You're a good person. What's a step up from a man? XY chromosome, that is. None of this mankind stuff. Women are definitely a step down, officially. Perhaps you'd come back as an alien. You'd probably like that. Distractions, because there's something else I have to confess. Something else that's awful. Really, really awful. Not pretend, oh no, I'm such a bitch. I couldn't tell you this if you were alive. Your death has given me power over others, and this horrible, deeply hidden bit of me secretly likes the drama. I hate knowing I have that in myself. It's not happened much. A few times Fitz has caught himself saying something about relationships and stopped because it might upset me. Someone said something about my boyfriend, something like that, and I quite calmly said he'd been killed recently. Their expression! I'm using your death to get attention. It's quite the most loathsome thing I've ever done. The only person that doesn't happen with is the Doctor. He seems to understand everything, to know exactly the right things to say. I think, with the doctor's help, I may be able to grieve properly. That's not to say you have to worry. I don't fancy him. He's the sort of man I might have said he's gorgeous about to tease you, if he'd been on TV. But you'd know I didn't mean anything by it. And, you know, of all the bad things I might be, I'm not a rebound woman. And anyway, amazing eyes, gorgeous smile, but several thousand years older than me. That was one of the fun things we had. Okay, so you went to Sunday school, not temple and drama school, not university. But we both remembered Spangles and Space Hoppers and the adventure game on telly, and did GCSEs, and bought albums by ABBA and Nick Kershaw, and the first Bond either of us saw on the big screen was Timothy Dalton, and we could argue about whether he was better or worse than Sean Connery. Shared experiences. How am I going to relate to people with whom I don't have those little cultural touchstones? People for whom things like email and Professor X aren't everyday currency. You remember how, to start with, I had to keep explaining to you what I meant when I said ordinary things like Bangra or Chakra? Well, England 2001 has suddenly become the biggest in-joke in the universe. I'm talking about me again. I think it's because as soon as I start thinking of you, I have to either hate myself or cry. I love you, Dave. I really, really love you. All my love, Anji. XXXXX. Send now, send later. Send now. Unable to send. Fatal error. Anji reached the door to her room and went in, shutting it behind her. She sat down on what was now her bed and kicked off her shoes. But she wasn't really there. The door opened and Dave came in. He'd been in all day, of course, and Anji had been in the office till 7, but he hadn't got them any tea. Being too busy, he'd said, although she knew that that meant sitting in front of the TV and occasionally flicking through the Help Wanted ads. But he'd taken off her shoes and rubbed her feet, ignoring the smell, and kissed her legs all the way up to the hem of her skirt. Then he'd grinned and offered to pop out for pizza. He put the pizza down on the table in front of her, then produced a can of fizz out of each coat pocket and let her choose which one she wanted. And he got a portion of coleslaw too, even though she was the only one who liked it. They snuggled in front of the telly, teasing out strands of mozzarella from each other's pizza slices. Dave picked the olives off his half and left them in the box lid. They kissed, but didn't hug because their hands were greasy. And then Dave ran her a bath with as many bubbles as in the TV commercials and lit scented candles around the bathroom, and afterwards kissed her from head to toe and took her to bed. They were both laughing. The door opened and Dave came in. He had been for an audition and they'd given him the part on the spot. Only a weekend's work, but he'd opened a bottle of champagne to celebrate. They'd drunk it in about 10 minutes flat, and she hadn't stopped giggling for 2 hours. They'd played strip Scrabble, even though neither of them could work out what the rules for that should be. Anji had still won. When the programme had come on TV, she had videoed it, and watched his 2.5 minutes 8 times in a row while he was out. She'd never told him that. The door opened and Dave came in, same time every night and the same routine. Old married couple stuff. Spontaneity would be good, but there were bits of her that had missed the routine if it went. The door opened and Dave... The door opened and... The door opened. The door didn't open. The door was never going to open again, and once she started crying, she was never going to stop. The door opened, and the doctor came in. He held out a hand and helped her to her feet. Still holding her hand, he led her out of the room. "There's something I found earlier," he said. "I think you should see it." They went down lots of corridors. Anji knew she'd never find her way back on her own. Finally, the doctor turned off into a room. If it could be called a room. It was amazing. It was just like being in the countryside. There was lush green grass instead of a floor, and blue skies where there should be a ceiling. The whole place exuded an aura of tranquility, and Anji breathed in deeply. The air smelled so fresh. She almost smiled. The doctor led her further in, and they sat down on a flowery slope under a tree, placing themselves carefully so as not to crush any daisies. Neither of them said anything for quite a while. Then Anji began to cry, a few sobs at first, and then she was wailing her heart out. The doctor put his arms round her and held her close. Eventually the tears subsided. Embarrassed, Anji pulled away, looking anywhere but at the doctor. It was then she noticed the chrysalids. They were everywhere, by each daisy on each twig. There must be thousands of them. What are these? She asked the doctor, without turning round. What will they become? I don't know, he said softly. But it's new life. Isn't it wonderful? Anji took a deep breath. Then she laid her head back on the doctor's chest and cried again.